Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My friends, you should not learn my name. It's even very difficult for Hungarians. It's a very long day for you, I guess. Therefore, to try to maintain your attention, I try to be as open and as informal as I can. I do not would like to speak very complicated things. Mainly because, according to me, politics is not very complicated. We have to organize the people being together, organize their life, try to keep together our societies. Most of the questions are not very difficult. I was 80 years old. At the end of 80s, it was a fantastic period. You can remember those pictures from Sofia till Berlin. Many of us, in some way, we were involved in those political and social movements. Remembering it's an obligation, it's a human and political and moral obligation, because there were 10 and 10,000 brave men and women who changed our life, who changed their societies, and finally, they changed Europe. There's a very simple question. Why it happened and how it happened? I know that the general answer everywhere, that the people wanted to be free. This is a very colloquial. Yes, we may say, we wanted to be free. But can you imagine that this very abstract expression, like freedom, it's enough in itself to electrifying thousands and thousands, and finally to reach the final goal? Being very honest, I do have some doubts. Not because I do not think that the freedom itself would not be enough to launch some kind of revolutionary movement. But I think in itself it does not represent enough escalatory power. Yes, you may say that, Frank, I'm a Frank. Look at Frank. If we look back to the history of Europe, you may see a lot of wars and fights for freedom of religion, freedom of the communities, and freedom of the nations. Yes, it's true, but I assume that has to be something behind the curtain of the freedom, which is a real and core intention of the ordinary people. It's not very complicated. Everybody in my family, in my bigger family in Hungary, the very everyday life lived blue-collar workers. They do not use very complicated expressions. They do not have a very difficult, complicated idea about the world. Their intention is very simple. They would like to have a better life, better salary, more secure job, homing, and so on. According to me, when we are talking about freedom, most of the people in Europe, at least, or United States, practically thinking of normal, everyday, better life. You may say that it's a very simple comment or remark, what I'm saying, but it does have some consequence. At this point, I would like to touch Hungary. Probably you know very well that Hungarians and some Hungarian leaders, the former Prime Minister Mr. Németh and the Minister of Foreign Affairs Mr. Horn, they had a very important key role pulling down the Iron Curtain, opening the borders, giving a real contribution, reunifying Germany and reshaping Hungary. It's true. But when I have to describe what happened in Hungary at the end of the 80s, I have to admit to you, not because I would like to downgrade the keen of freedom of Hungarians, but because I lived there. Most of the Hungarians wanted to have something else. At the end of the 80s, we had a new prime minister, the communist prime minister, and trying to strengthen the regime, they decided that every Hungarian have a right to get $50 and freely move to Vienna or Berlin and spending there fantastic a lot of money, $50. $50. All the Hungarians were very happy. Everybody put the grandma, grandpa, all the sisters and brothers into the car because in this way they could accumulate this $50, having $300, and travel to Vienna. They bought refrigerator, they bought hi-fi, no, not hi-fi, hi-fi, yes, hi-fi. They bought color TVs and something like that. They were absolutely happy. Then they came back. And when this change of regime, or the atmosphere of change of regime came, practically most of Hungarians did not want to be free. They much more wanted that the famous shopping street of Vienna, called Mariahilfestrasse should move to Budapest. We would like to have own Mariahilfestrasse everywhere. We would like to have the same standard of living which is enjoyed our Western European friends and colleagues and citizens. Why it happened? At least partly because Hungary was a little bit different than any other Eastern Central European countries. Mr. Kádár, the very famous communist leader, offered a very dirty political, moral, cultural business to the people. If you can accept that there are just 3 taboos, no more, just 3 taboos, you can enjoy a relatively free life, and all of the shops will full with goods, relatively good services and something like that. That time, Hungary was a Gulyás communism. This was the expression, comparing to the other countries. We were the happiest barrack, as it were described. Practically, the difference between the repressors and the repressed people was dismantled. It was totally different than under Ceausescu in Romania, or Todor Zhivkov in Bulgaria, Erich Honecker in DDR. I would like to continue. At the beginning of 80s, perhaps, the Time magazine wrote, if Hungary had had a free election, probably Mr. Kádár would have elected freely. Why is important? Because if I would like to understand what happened with Hungary in the last 9 years, I have to go back to this point. We have not learned that we have to fight for ourselves. Mr. Orban, the current Prime Minister, I do not have a very high opinion on him. Mr. Orban was the first who understood that he can repeat the very same dirty business with the people. If I offer them the new national pride, if I can offer to them the relatively secure political life without debates, they can accept almost everything. This is the long, long shadow of Mr. Kádár, the communist leader, which has a real impact now. Therefore, most of Hungarians accepted the dismantle of the Hungarian democratic system. I do not want to go into the scientific debate whether it's a hybrid regime, it's an authoritarian regime or dictatorship. But in the truth, if the government invade all the state, all the independent bodies, if the election not fair and free, because, for example, if the communication is not free, the election cannot be free and fair, for example. Why I told it to you? Because I would like to warn you. If you sell the core values of any society, the ultimate end will be that the society will lose its political and cultural immunity, and you can do whatever you want. And this is what happened with us in the last couple of years. Many times I'm asked that whether the European Union would do more than it does. My first answer is that, this is our lesson. It's not a lesson of European Union. We Hungarians have to respond to these dramatic challenges we are facing. For me, the question as I started, that there's a simple question for me, or a series of simple questions in the politics, it's very clear. We would like to have a more integrated Europe, we would like to have a stronger Europe, or we would like to have, let me say, national, cooperative, independent states. I believe the historical idea of United Nations of Europe. I do not use the United States of Europe expression because most of the people start to think about United States of America, try to compare how Europe would work in a very similar way how United States of America works. No, it's two different historical cultural stories. Although our historical roots are common from the old ancient regimes till the Enlightenment, era of Enlightenment, but this is the different nations, different languages, different everyday commons and habits and attitudes, and it's a real value. We have to be simultaneously German, Italian, French, Polish, Hungarian, and European. Yes, finally, I would like to see a real federal state. But when I'm saying that we must not play with history. I do not just would like to refer to those kind of ugly politicians like Trump, Salvini, Orban, and others. Sorry to say, Kaczynski. But I would like to pay your attention that the freedom itself, if it does not go hand in hand with the permanently increasing better life for many, finally we will jeopardize this freedom. It's fantastic to write articles about freedom. Oh, it's good. It's fantastic delivering speech about freedom. It's fantastic, really. But at the end of the day, you have to go home. You have to pay your invoices. The general and everyday value of the freedom for most of the people is whether it can ensure a better life. And if you look at the last 10 years, we see that when our economies are growing with a couple of percentages, the distribution of this increased common income and fortune is more and more unequal. This is a problem. If we will not be able to provide more social equalities to the people, sooner or later they will be grabbed by those kind of people like Salvini and my Hungarian fellow Mr. Orban. I don't would like to refer to Piketty, or I do not want to bring the Tobin tax here. No. I just would like to call everybody's attention that if we would like to preserve Europe as free as we would like to see, we do not have to provide just the legal freedom, but more and more social equality. Not because I'm a central leftist guy, just because I know this is the only one strong pillar which can preserve this democratic Europe and democratic nations. Yes, and I am arguing for stronger global governance. I am arguing for those kind of capacities according to which we can handle those kind of global challenges like climate crisis, like terrorism and whatsoever. Yes, more globalized world, more globalized Europe, more democracy and more social equality. This is what I would like to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Any question to the Mr. Prime Minister? Yeah. Any question? Yeah, please.
Americans. Yeah.
Esteemed colleague, you caught my attention when you started with the history of Hungary. And in my minor, when I was a student, I had the privilege to be in a time of a period, and I see a lot of young fellows very interested in the matter. I did in my minor of history the comparison with Europe, communism, and United States of America. What an incredible ride it was for me in '89 when I saw the Berlin Wall fall. And the reason I want to ask you this is because you lived it vividly in the European continent. Would you agree with me, or not me, my father? Because my father said to me, son, the man that doesn't know his history doesn't know where he is going. Would you agree with me that in order to preserve that state of mind, the liberty, you have to well document your history? Because I have listened very careful to your intervention, and you almost finished your intervention with, we are repeating the same mistakes we did in that period of time. And that's why the question is, Do you agree with me that we have to well document our history in order to preserve this liberty given to us in that period of time? Thank you very much.
Yes, I absolutely can agree with you, and I think that all of the countries in Europe, or at least those countries who were involved in this revolutionary process, we try to document, we try to collect all the documents we have and analyze it. But may I say one more remark? I think it's so normal that most of the people do not think about history, do not know the history, and do not would like to be historical player. They just would like to live. I believe, I just try to hope that you will not misunderstand me. I believe in the necessity of leadership. In the parties, in the movements, in the countries, and in Europe, who are formulating, who are putting into some wider context and framework what is happening, showing the final goal, explaining that why we are fighting is this or that, and what we are doing will result this or that. But there is an important and very important role of the leadership, because leadership without morality produce criminals in politics. This is what we see. It's very easy to use the leadership against your nation, against the final interest of your nation. Everybody can speak about the interest of the nation, yeah. This is the final argument. Whatever you do, the final sentence is, this is the interest of my nation. You are a liar, or you are honest man. Both of them can use this sentence.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, the last question, please. Short question.
Short answer. Okay, I understood.
Mr.
You don't have to be
Gyurcsány,
polite.
I have a question about, in your opinion, how do you see the post-communist societies, starting with the Hungarian society and also your neighbors? I'm from Romania. How they look back to their recent past after 30 years after the communist fall, and if they are looking back with angry or getting along with this recent past. Thank you.
I do not would like to be very negative. But please understand, if you would like to have a democratic, liberal country, you need citizens who are independent in terms of cultural background, social background, moral background, existence and something like that. Without independent citizens, you cannot build up a strong democracy. And because Romania, Hungary, East Germany, we are not very rich in this kind of liberal, independent citizens. The middle class is not strong. Therefore, it's very easy to play any kind of political game with us. We have not learned how we can be independent. This is the problem. But doing that, it's almost impossible from up to down. In which way you can reverse this process? This is the main historical question.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. To share your views.